Welcome to the Justice Journal podcast. I'm Sacramento County District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert. I hope you enjoy this podcast series where we discuss important public safety issues and provide insight into who we are as an office and what we do both in the courtroom and in the community to provide the highest level of public safety through prosecution, prevention, and innovation.
Welcome to the Justice Journal podcast. I'm your host, Shelley Oreo. Today's podcast is the third of a four-part series on the topic of DUI, which is driving under the influence of alcohol, and DUID, which is driving under the influence of drugs. Today's discussion will be on preventing DUI, DUID youth offenders. For purpose of today's discussion, we'll be focusing primarily on teenagers. I'm joined by Judge Curtis Fiorini, Deputy District Attorney Stefanie Mahaffey, CEO of Arrive Alive California, Angela Webb, and CHP Officer Travis Herbert. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I have each of you introduce yourselves, just your background and your current roles? And Stefanie, we'll start with you.
Thank you. My name is Stefanie Mahaffey. I am a Deputy District Attorney. I've been working in the Sacramento County DA's office for almost 22 years now. Been in a number of assignments. Currently, I am the lead prosecutor for the DUI/DUID misdemeanor prosecution, education, and outreach program. Funding for this program is provided by a grant from the California Office of Traffic Safety through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And this is a four-part podcast series, and it's part of the education and outreach efforts that go along with this grant.
Perfect. Thank you. And how about Judge Fiorini?
Hello, everybody. My name is Judge Curtis Fiorini. I'm the Superior Court Judge in Sacramento County. I'm currently presiding over criminal jury trials, and I've had various previous assignments, including presiding over our domestic violence home court, as well as our DUI home court. I've personally sentenced thousands of offenders who have committed DUI offenses. And I preside over all kinds of trials, including everything from DUIs to homicides. And I was appointed in 2010. And prior to becoming a judge, I was a prosecutor at the Sacramento County District Attorney's Office.
Great. Thank you. And Angela.
Hello, good morning. My name is Angela Webb. I am the CEO of Arrive Alive California, and we actually have the privilege of going into high schools to bring reality-based and evidence-based DUI prevention programs, either through live assemblies, virtual assemblies, or classroom discussions. So we work throughout the state. We've started the Real DUI Court here in Sacramento County about 13 years ago. And 4 years ago, we went statewide to provide the information for all students.
And Officer Herbert.
Hi, my name is Travis Herbert. I'm with CHP. I've been with CHP for about 22 years now. I can almost say 23. During my time as an officer, I've been a standardized field sobriety testing instructor. I'm a drug recognition expert instructor. I've been an instructor since 2005. And my current assignment involves me teaching drug recognition expert courses, advanced roadside impaired driving enforcement courses, standardized field sobriety testing courses, and pretty much anything that I can do in terms of talking about impaired driving, drug driving, drug trends, emerging drug trends, anything like that. So I'm heavily involved in removing the impaired driver.
Great. Thank you all. Let's spend a few minutes talking about the problem and the problem here in Sacramento County specifically. In 2020, our office, the Sacramento DA's office, filed 263 felony and 3,954 misdemeanor DUI, DUID cases. Stefanie, just anecdotally, are we seeing the same rates, the same trends going into 21 and 22?
We are, and one of the things too that we've been noticing since 2020, when the beginning of COVID, is that the impairment has gotten more. We've been seeing a lot of higher blood alcohol levels in a lot of our cases. And we're also seeing a lot of DUI cases that also have drug components to them, where when the blood is tested, there are additional substances, a lot of prescription medications, as well as illegal substances. So the numbers are pretty consistent through this year, but we are noticing a higher level of impairment with a lot of these drivers.
And Officer Herbert, same to you anecdotally. What are you and your other CHP officers seeing on the roads, and specifically, if you can, among our teenagers?
I think amongst the teenagers, they a lot of times I don't think they truly understand the impact or the amount of divided attention that is required when driving. So even a small amount of alcohol in some cases, or a small amount of drugs, and particularly when you mix them, and how much they can impair your ability to drive a vehicle safely. I always like to use the analogy of, when was the last time you looked at the ignition cylinder when you inserted your key into the ignition? Most people don't think about, They're like, what? When you insert the key to the ignition, you just put it right in and went right away. And not knowing at the same exact time, what else did you do? You put your foot on the brake. And then you reached up and grabbed the seatbelt without looking at it, and you put it down and you insert it into the buckle without having to look at it. And all these things happen and take place in a matter of seconds, without you even having to think about it. And when you get alcohol and or drugs involved, guess what? Those processes become impaired, even a little bit. And when you don't have all your faculties, and particularly when it comes to teenagers who don't have a lot of experience to build on, it can be very devastating when it comes to driving. So even a little alcohol, a little bit of drugs, or a combination of them can be done. So we're seeing that a lot right now. It's just not understanding how it affects them.
And have you, again, anecdotally seen an increase or seen any difference in youth DUI, DUIDs since COVID? I know a lot of them have been struggling.
Well, I think a lot of times we have to look at idle hands or the devil's workshop. And so a lot of times when people, particularly at home, they're spending a lot of time, they're going over to friends' houses. They were taken out of school. A lot of the activities and things of that nature that were normally associated with school, sports and things of that nature, a lot of that stuff didn't happen for a while. So kids had a lot of time on their hands. And next thing you know, they're going out and they're doing things that, they're going to parties and things of that nature. And, they're getting caught up in it and not having rides home and things of that nature, and afraid to call their parents. So there's a lot of things, as far as particularly with COVID, it's just been really bad for the kids, just because they've had so much time on their hands and so much stuff to distract them from actually, school and things of that nature. So,
well, given the challenges and the trends that we're seeing, this question is for everybody. Why do you think it's important to reach teenagers and younger kids early on to educate them about these DUI issues? I'm going to start with Angela this time.
Thank you. I think addressing the myths are a really big issue when it comes to prevention education out there. Students as young as middle school, the sooner we can reach them, the better, all the way through high school and then college as well. But really addressing the myths, I believe one statistics, it's shocking, but 2/3 of teenagers believe they drive better on marijuana. They drive better when they have a buzz. And really that's not the case. Just as Officer Herbert was saying, the faculties are not working correctly, but really coming in and addressing myths, providing honest and truth of the idea, how their brains are not even fully functioned yet. And you add in a substance to that and it does not mix well. So I think that is the first and foremost of how important this is. Middle school is when they start forming their own opinions about things. High school is when they start acting out on them. So providing them truth is really where the prevention education comes in.
Great. And Judge Fiorini, what do you see as the importance?
Sure. I'd like to follow up on Miss Webb and Officer Herbert had said, our driving under the influence cases, it's truly an epidemic that we're dealing with. And we're talking about a life or death situation. And like Officer Herbert was saying, young people, they don't have much experience with drinking and how it affects the body and limits that could pertain to them, how much is too much. Also, they don't have much experience with driving. They're not as skilled as drivers. And so when you combine those two, it's just a deadly combination. And we think this is really important to reach teenagers because we want to give them the tools, some ideas, some options that they might not think about until it's too late, until after the fact. And, lots of things in life, we learn from our mistakes. And here, sometimes that's not possible because the mistakes can be deadly either to the driver or to somebody else. So it's important to share with young people, educate them because of the great danger that's involved, and give them some options and ideas of how they can address situations that they may be in to get them home safely.
Very good point. They might not get a second chance. So yeah. Very good point. And then Stephanie and Officer Herbert, do you have anything to add?
I just really think that the programs that we do getting in and really talking to these kids, just like Angela said, about being real with them, giving them real information, and presenting them with the realities of the dangers, the tragedies, all of the things that can happen for doing something that is really preventable if you can plan for the future before you get into a situation. So I just really think that getting out there and getting these kids when they're young is really the time to start just making them aware and giving them something to think about that they can carry over into the future.
And I have to agree with everybody. I teach a class at UC Davis. It's called Drugs and Society. And yes, I'll refer to them as kids because they're 18, 19-year-old kids. And there's a few components to it. There's like a business component to drugs, and there's the doctor component to drugs, and then there's the law enforcement aspect of it. And obviously I'm teaching the law enforcement aspect of it, or part of it anyway. And so I talked to them about all the drugs and how they affect the body and things of that nature from an impairment perspective. And so you talk to them about methamphetamine, and the look on their faces, oh, meth is bad, and fentanyl's bad, and heroin's bad, and PCP's bad, and all these things are bad. But then when you get to cannabis, next thing you know, everything changes and their demeanor changes and the look on their face. And suddenly it's like, oh, well, cannabis is going to bring world peace. It's going to cure cancer. And it's going to do this. And oftentimes they only hear one part of it. And I think that we have to really, really drive home that, almost everything in life, there's going to have to be, there's an action, there's going to be an equal and opposite reaction. And they only get one side, the good side, or whatever they want to consider as a good side, as opposed to these are the negative effects. And everything is like that in life. And they only hear the one side. And I think that, talking to them about the negative aspects of just about anything, particularly when it comes to drug, is very important because, like I said, they only hear the one part of it, and when they get and then they make the decision to get behind the wheel after they smoked a little cannabis. Well, this could be a very costly mistake, and they just don't understand it. And hopefully, we can get in there and really speak to them on that level about the negative parts of it.
Let's talk a little bit more about one particular program for students. And Angela, you mentioned broadly this earlier, the Real DUI Court in Schools. Let's talk a little bit more about the details. Can you explain and describe what that program looks like? And then we'll have everybody else talk about their roles, but if you can just set it up for us.
Absolutely. So the Real DUI Court in Schools program we have three formats that we provide schools to meet their schedule and their needs. The first and foremost, and obviously all participants here, our favorite, is the live assembly. And we will go in and transfer the sentencing of a first-time DUI offender to an actual high school or middle school or college. So they will be able to see and experience what the court sentencing is like with a real defendant, real case, and hear from a judge and the defendant and district attorney and public defender's office about their role in this case and basically within the judicial system. And we bring in also CHP as a drug recognition expert, talk a little bit about their role in the case from the pullover to the end. And then we conclude with a victim, either from a family member or a victim themselves who has been impacted by a drunk driving incident. And it is powerful. We provide about 15 minutes worth of Q&A. So we'll pass around a microphone and all of the panelists and court members that are there will answer questions directly for the students. So again, that providing them a venue really to ask questions that they have that really they would not have otherwise. So we have that. It is a real case. It is a little bit different than some of the other prevention programs that are going on in schools because it's real. It's not the what if scenario, but it is the real deal. What's happening and what this defendant, it's completely voluntary for them to join and be a part of this. And then we have the virtual program where they will still have that interaction component at the end of seeing and viewing a sentencing of a first-time DUI offender, as well as a classroom version where we provide materials and handouts. A lot of teachers are utilizing that for a week long. And then at the very end, we'll bring in court members to have that interaction component. But it is dynamic. It is the real deal. And the students actually get to interact with people they would really not come in contact with on good circumstances.
It's amazing. So you bring an actual court hearing to the high schools.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow. That is definitely different. Stephanie, can you talk about your role in the program?
Sure. So I go through our DUI cases that we've already filed here in the office and try to identify some first-time DUI offenders who basically realize their mistake and would like to be examples for these students, and talk to their attorneys and see if we can get something set up to bring them into the schools. And then either me, it will be me, or somebody else from our office, if I'm not available, goes to the school, and I am the prosecutor in these cases. And do the people's job in doing the plea, and then a little bit of background for the students on what kinds of statistics there are, and just kind of talking to them about what the prosecution side of driving under the influence cases looks like.
Okay. And Judge Fiorini, the judge's role in the program.
Sure. So yes, after the Ms. Mahaffey finds an attorney and defendants willing to do the program, then they'll notify the court, we'll schedule, and can go out to schools. I'll bring myself, I'll bring my staff, including our bailiff. And what we do in the courtroom, we do out at the school. We call the case to order. All the formality is there, and I'll take the defendant's plea. I'll sentence the defendant, all the fines and fees, all the jail time, everything. I explain it just like I would in court. And then I address the students, and I explain what we did, why we did certain things. And then I'll moderate a discussion with defense counsel to explain their role to the students. And then with Ms. Mahaffey and the prosecutor, explain their role. And then I'll talk to the defendant and engage in the conversation, ask the defendant questions, so they can have an opportunity to share their story about what happened and what mistakes they made and how they would do things differently. And, you know, what was it like to be in the back of the patrol car? What was it like when you were in jail? Were you alone in a cell? No, you weren't. And so they can see, then the students can actually hear and visualize what happens upon arrest all the way through court. And then they can see what happens in the courtroom. And it is a real case. It is a real plea and a real sentencing. And it's what we do here in the courtroom. We just do it out at the school so they can see how it all happens.
With the program being so unique, what's the feedback? What's the response you've received from students and others? Angela, I'll start with you.
You know, this is one of the favorite programs, especially here in Sacramento County. We're honored to be bringing this again for our 13th year. We're already starting to book for this next year. The schools really enjoy it because we handle everything on our end. All we have to do is have them select a date and a time, and if the court is available, we handle everything. We'll bring in a production crew with mics and sound and visual. We schedule the courts, but put it on their docket. We handle it. It's a turnkey operation for schools. They don't have to think about a thing. And it's at no cost to the schools for all of us to be there and to bring this. The feedback from the students, they love it. We're very good with capturing data and statistics from students. So we'll do a pre-survey, a post-survey, kind of where you were at before you hear this information. Where are you at now that you understand the dangers and consequences of driving under the influence of alcohol and or drugs? And then would you share this information with your parents and your friends and your loved ones? You know, 94% of the students who took our survey anonymously, mind you, said, yes, absolutely, I am sharing this information. That's huge for youth to be so supportive of a program coming into their school. And then at the end of the year, we do a follow-up. Now that the emotional impact of our messaging has kind of subsided, you've probably had a real life experience in the last 6 months. We do another survey. And again, just overwhelmingly, yes, I remember the things we learned in that presentation. Yes, it impacted my decisions, and I did not drink and drive or get in a car with someone who had been drinking, driving, and using. And that is what this program is really all about, is that prevention, but not just emotionally. We need to make that heart connection of impact with reality. And just as the judge said and Stefanie said, we don't just bring the information, we provide them tools. And that those tools of thinking ahead and planning ahead, even when the judge asked the defendant about the night, you know, we talk about the financial consequences, the emotional consequences. Who did you have to call to get you out of jail? All these things that get the kids thinking about, is it worth it? No, this is not a choice or a decision you want to make. The ramifications of, you're not probably going to qualify for student financial aid in college if you have a DUI on your record at a young age, you know, all of the different things to really get them thinking. And so far, we continue to have such great success and overwhelmingly support from youth and the administrations out there.
That's impressive. It's hard to get students to say that they actually like the program. So
right, and engaged.
Exactly.
I mean, you can hear, Shelley, you can hear a pin drop. 90 minutes with students. I think our largest one was 2,800 students in an assembly, and you can hear a pin drop for 90 minutes, no messing around. They are so engaged with what's going on. And there's a system to it. We move fast. We don't do death by PowerPoint for kids. It's not a lecture. It is a presentation, and everyone that comes out, from the judge, the prosecutor, the defendant, great selections from the DA's office and law enforcement, they are engaged with the students and they know how to talk to students. And I think that is so impressive that these kids just, they really learn.
And Judge and Stefanie, your thoughts and insight into the program, the engagement as well?
Well, I'll say that, you know, I look at this program from on a couple of levels. First, as a prosecutor who's interested in protecting the public and keeping people safe and encouraging people to make the right decisions. But the other way that I come about looking at this program is from a personal viewpoint. I am a parent of a daughter who will be driving soon. She will have her license soon. And I love having this program in the schools because I think that there is so much misinformation out there between these students. And I hear some things that, you know, these kids talk about. And it's just so important to get the real story out there for them, show them the real impact of it. When we do the virtual DUI program, there is a video at the beginning of it that is extremely, extremely powerful. The first time I watched it, I was very affected by it. And I believe that it's a little bit of a scared straight thing, which I think is a very good thing for these kids to see. It's a good thing for them to hear. And I think that this program is just so important because any time, as Angela said, anytime you can get kids to sit there, captivate them, and pay attention, and they have no choice but to listen at that point. And our hope is that we provide them with some tools and things that they can think about in order to keep themselves safe, their family safe, their friends safe, and really make intelligent decisions when it comes to getting behind the wheel of a car.
Right. And Judge, your insight.
Well, I think it's, students usually do not get an opportunity to see the inner workings of a courtroom. And unless you serve jury duty or you're charged with a crime, then most of the public doesn't really get to see what happens in a courtroom in real life. And like Stefanie says, there's all kinds of misconceptions out there, inaccuracies about the court system and prosecutions of cases, from television and social media. So we show the reality of what happens in court, the actual sentence, the actual plea. And then we're available to answer those questions. Not only do we do it at a presentation and answer the questions there, but some students are a little, too shy to have the microphone and talk in front of 23 other students. So they'll come up to us afterwards, and all of us will get questions individually from them, and really smart questions about their particular situation. So we're available for them. But the program's important because it helps students, like I said before, think about this issue ahead of time, and the specific situation that they're in before they're in it. So we're hopeful, and I think what this program does is if they go to a friend's house and there's alcohol at the friend's house, then we want this program to then pop into their head, for them to pop into their mind so they can think about some of the issues that we brought up, so they can make a plan of what they're going to do. Are they going to leave then? Are they going to stay and engage in the party? And if so, how are they going to get home? And make that plan ahead of time. How are they going to be safe? So we're hoping that, especially talking to them young in junior high, and like Angela says, then they start to act in high school, is if they're going to find themselves in a situation like that. And if we can give them those tools and have them see what happens, and it's like, you know what, I better make some plans to get home, or call my parents and see if I can spend the night before, drinking or doing something like that. So I think the program is very, very effective that way. And, when I started doing this a while ago with Ms. Webb, and I had young sons that were in high school and college, and every time I come, not every time, but after the first few times I come home, I talk to them about it, share what we talked about and things that we discussed and issues that we discussed. Because like Stefanie said, that video that we show is very powerful. It's hard to watch. You watch it the first time, and then it's really hard to watch, and it leaves an impact with you. And first time I saw it and we went through it, I went home, hugged my boys, and said, okay, let's talk about this. How are we what's the situation if you're in? And we ended up, and we say this through the program, that we encourage students to make a plan. And I did that with my sons. Like, hey, you can call us, mom or me, anytime, the day or night, if you're in a situation and you need a ride home, you've been drinking, and you're not going to get in trouble, because we want you to get home safely. We'll talk about the situation and how you got in the situation, how to avoid it, but they're not going to get in trouble if they do call, because I'd rather have that call from them in the middle of the night than Officer Herbert knocking on my door in the middle of the night telling me that my sons aren't going to come home. So it really helps encourage even us participants to share with family and friends and loved ones. I think it's really important just because it keeps you thinking about tragic consequences that can happen and how to avoid them. Because it's more than just what happens in court. We show them what happens in court, but that's if you get a DUI and you go to court and I take your plea and I sentence you, you're lucky. That is the best. That is really the best that could happen. You got off the road safely, and you just have financial consequences and consequences about job and stuff like that. But you didn't take your own life and you didn't take the life of somebody else. So it's just great to have that program that keeps people thinking about it. And we want students, if they're going to be in that situation, to think about this and think about the consequences so they can do something before it's too late.
All right. And Officer Herbert, I know CHP has been very involved in DUI prevention for a long time. What other additional programs does CHP have specifically for youth?
Well, the first one we have is Start Smart, which is aimed at helping newly licensed or soon to be licensed teenage drivers 15 to 19 become more aware of the responsibilities that accompany the privilege of being licensed. The newly licensed teen driver and their parents are invited to attend and participate in a free 2-hour-long Start Smart class, usually hosted at a local CHP office. The CHP officers speak directly to the newly licensed driver and their parents and guardians through candid conversations discussing topics such as collision avoidance techniques, along with collision-causing elements such as excessive speed, DUI drugs, distracted driving. Start Smart makes sense to teens and they make teens and parents aware of the responsibilities they face and teach what precautions that they can to take safe and effective actions in making sure that they get home safely. The other one that we talk about or that we have is Every 15 Minutes, which is a 2-day program focusing on high school seniors and juniors, which challenges them to think about drinking, driving, personal safety, and the responsibility of making mature decisions on the impact and the impact that their decisions can have on their family, their friends, the community, and others. It brings together a broad coalition of local agencies, including the CHP, local law enforcement, hospitals, emergency medical responders, schools, businesses, and clubs, which all work together to make sure that everything is effective. It's very dramatic, very emotional, and purposely so. And they're reminded about their choices and that the choices that they make involving alcohol and drugs are going to, what kinds of effects they're going to have in the long run. And these programs are very effective. They're very powerful. I've participated in several Every 15 Minutes program, and I just, it amazes me when you see the look on the kid's face when they see a collision scene. And I've been to thousands of collision scenes in my time on the job. And when they see one that's as graphic, and the good job that they do with that and how impactful it is, and realizing that, one of their friends, it could have been them that made a decision to get behind the wheel while they're impaired. It's very powerful. And they realize that there are consequences to their actions. And I would highly recommend these programs to any teen so they can understand the effects of their consequences.
So again, that program is unique in that they actually bring a collision to the school so they can see up close what a collision looks like.
Yes, and it is as realistic as you can possibly get without actually being at a real collision. And they do a very good job of that. And it's very impactful. Like I said, the look on their face says it all.
Okay. Well, for parents and guardians, because that's who's going to be listening to this podcast today, what advice or resources do you have for them regarding their teens driving? Angela, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Yeah. When we conclude our programs at all of our assemblies and schools, we leave them with two things. Empowerment. Obviously, they now have tools and some different things that they have learned, but we also send them off with a challenge. And the challenge is to go home and talk to your parents. put in a agreement with your parents of, should you ever find yourself in this situation, what should I do? Can I call you? Because I guarantee you're going to make bad choices along the way, but this is not one that you want. This will devastate your parents. So again, challenge them to do that. But for the parents and guardians out there, there is so many resources to get the conversation started. And I'll definitely plug one of my favorite organizations is Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And on their website, madd.org, they have a whole section which is called Power of the Parents. And isn't that the truth? That the parents have so much power in bringing up this conversation, putting together some agreements with their children, and the website provides opener questions, how to talk, the different parenting styles, and how to approach this. And if I could say it once, I'll say it 100 times. The conversation doesn't just happen once. It's not a one and done, and you think they know it. It happens all the time. It's reiterating again what our values are as a family, and the devastation that this decision could cause. And let's think this through. So again, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, mad.org has fantastic resources for parents to get the conversation going and to continue on with it. So that would be a great recommendation from my standpoint.
Judge.
I would suggest to parents to be approachable and be open. I think let we've been talking about, let your child call you in a situation, especially if you don't know what they should do. The fear is that they will risk a DUI in order not to get in trouble with you. They're going to be afraid to be grounded. Maybe they won't be able to go to the prom, and they're going to get in trouble. And then they're going to think that, well, I can get home safely. I'm not that drunk. And they're going to take that risk, because then if they get home safely and they don't get a DUI, then they're not in trouble and they can go to the prom. So I would be approachable. And that's how I did it, because it's tough, because as parents, as teenagers, we focus a lot on discipline. It's a very important part of their time of their lives. They're becoming more independent. They're becoming more responsible. And when they get out of line, we tend to ground them or punish them as a form of discipline to teach the important lessons in life. With DUIs, you don't want them to cause, hey, I'm at a friend's house and we had some drinks. What do you mean you were drinking? You're grounded. That kind of, you want them to feel like they can call you and get you home, and then have that conversation with them about great job calling me. I'm glad I came pick you up. You got home safe. That's the right thing to do. Now, who are you hanging out with when you're doing underage or drinking? Maybe we can do something like that, but not punish them for calling you if they are under the influence, because then they won't call, and they'll take that risk, and it could be devastating. So be approachable, be open, and talk about it in advance. And like Angela just said, it's not a one-time deal. You keep talking about it, and they develop and they go through different stages through high school and different stages of maturity. So it's great to keep reminding them about it. And your kid, how responsible they are or how irresponsible they may be and how much talk they may need. So, but my approach would be more to be approachable, open, and less disciplinarian if they were to call me, because I want them home alive.
All right. And Officer Herbert, and then we'll close with Stefanie.
Well, I think everything has been said in terms of being approachable and having conversations. And I'm just going to have to just totally agree with them 1,000,000%. The conversations can be quick. Hey, I love you. Remember, if you go out and you need anything, my phone number. I will be there in a heartbeat, and you're not going to get in trouble. And they can be very in depth about the idea of this is what happens when you get behind the wheel. You make that decision, and it doesn't just affect just you. It affects everybody. And they need to happen often, and they need to, and it has to be an open and free conversation. And hopefully in a place where there's no pressure it's just random. And it's just like, hey, and I'm thinking about it, but there's no pressure on me at this point in time, because sometimes that can just be the reminder. Oh, my dad said that he'll come pick me up, and that's what I need. And, make it available to your friends and their friends, to where like they all know that, hey, Mr. Herbert's will come pick me up anytime I need him. We're good to go. And so make available. And then obviously we can talk about, things later at a different time, but it's important to have that conversation, be open, be upfront, be honest. And that's the most important thing.
Right. And Stephanie, I'll have you close with your thoughts.
I think that one of the hardest things for parents and guardians when you're thinking about having a discussion like this with your child is that you don't want to make it seem like you're giving them permission to go out and drink, or to go out and give permission to smoke weed or take some other kind of drug. It's a hard line there. No parent wants their kid out, going out and getting under the influence and finding themselves in this terrible situation. I think that over the course of doing this job for so long, when you start seeing some of the tragedy that comes out of some of these cases, you really start to kind of change your tune with regard to, I don't want my kid to think I'm giving them permission, because really it is just keeping your child safe. Dealing with victims of vehicular manslaughters, people whose family member has been tragically killed, people who have been injured by a drunk driver, actually dealing with people who are going through grief, injury, pain, suffering as a result of the impact that a DUI driver had on them, really sobers one. And you start realizing the importance of really having those conversations with your child. And just like Angela said, there are resources on the MAD website and things that you can get some ideas where you're not giving permission. You're trying to keep them safe, and just being open to having your child call, just like Officer Herbert said, and Judge Fiorini, just having your child just be available, be open to it. And yes, it's not the time to yell and scream when you're going to pick them up if they've made a mistake. It's something to be dealt with later. But I just really would urge parents, it's not easy, but I would really urge people to be patient, try to be non-judgmental, try to give them a safe space so that they know that you are there for them if they need you, and encourage them to make that plan in advance and make yourself open.
Great. That's a perfect final thought. So thank you, everybody, very much. I think the information will be very helpful. We'll have some of the information on MAD on our show notes webpage. So thank you, everybody, very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can find all of the Justice Journal podcasts on our website at sacda.org, iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube.